It would seem like that conversation towards a just Nigeria laid the foundation for this one we're about to have, which is culture of development. Because, you know, the cultural policy of a country is central to its development. And Nigeria is a developing country in Africa with a written cultural policy as far back as 1988. And that has been implemented and has contributed to the social, economic, and political advancement thus far. Or has it? Well, those questions we'll answer this time with Akin Ogudiran, who is a professor of Africana Studies, Anthropology, and History, University of North Carolina. He joins us in the studio here. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
People are wondering that it would seem like, because when they think culture, what comes to them is Yoruba culture, Hausa culture, Igbo culture. That's it. Is that all there is to it?
No, there's more to culture than that. Our culture does not have to be ethnicized. However, ethnic origins sometimes give culture the flavor of anchoring people. In Nigeria...
Sorry, sir. I also know that scientists use the word culture.
Yes.
The culture of something.
Yes.
Is that the kind of thing you're talking about here?
No, I'm talking about a culture that anchors individual in the world. Okay. When we talk about culture in Nigeria, for the most part, we talk about performances, right? We treat culture as performance. I'm thinking of culture in terms of knowledge. I'm thinking of culture in terms of consciousness, because we're in globalization. And one of my challenges, or the kind of issues that I try to address, is how can we, as a people, as Africans, as Nigerians, how are we not going to lose ourselves in the morass of globalization, where we believe everything that comes from outside, but we do not introspect and use our own historical, cultural foundations as the platform of our own development. See, that is where I'm coming from.
I'm a bit confused. You are a professor in the University of North Carolina.
Yes.
But you are a Nigerian.
Yes.
So, an American looking at you now would think about, this man is a Nigerian, so he embodies the culture of Nigeria.
Yes.
So what would he be looking at when he looks at you and thinks that?
The person will be looking at me as a global man, a global citizen, who is anchored in African culture, who is anchored in African value systems, who is anchored, but at the same time...
Value systems.
Yes, value systems. Yes.
Value systems. Okay. Yes. What else?
And also, who can think across cultural boundaries. See, this is what makes a global... A global citizen doesn't mean that you have to lose yourself to become global. It means that you use the privilege of what you have, your history, the experience of your people, their accomplishment. You use them as the platform to innovate. So culture is not just about tradition. It's about innovations. It's about using that cultural framework to think about the future.
I think we need to go back to school. And I'll tell you why. Because, you see, what you're talking about here now, for instance, earlier, you know, in the previous conversation, we talked about the cultural beliefs of people that have, rather than help us develop, kept us stagnant. You know, people see the ethno-cultural divides as more prominent, more paramount than the national. And the conversation we're having this morning is about how culture can or does or not play a role in development. Yes. In which way have we shortchanged ourselves? In which way have we helped ourselves as a country? Because I'm pretty sure you've been following the trends.
Yes, I've been following the trend. You know, my question to the public would be, what is this national culture we're talking about? Do we really have a Nigerian national culture? So this is the crisis of what I call the crisis of post-colony. Many things about the post-colony, not just in Nigeria, in other parts of Africa, is negative because we are a mimicry of colonialism. We have not really decolonized ourselves. So when we talk about national culture, it's the culture of corruption. that people think about. It's the culture of violence. It's the culture of oppression of the state using its might to oppress the people.
When we say state, I'm sorry, sir. When we say state, let's decrypt it all.
Yes.
When we say the state hasn't been just one person since 1960.
Yes.
We have had different categories of people, different classes of people, irrespective of their cultural or ethnic identities,
yes,
over the past 60-something years.
Correct.
Everyone has come. Hausas have been in government, Igbos have been in government, Yorubas have been in government at different levels. They have been in the civil service. They have kept one thing or the other going or not.
But the policies have remained the same.
And
Yeah.
Well, at the end of the day, the policy does not implement itself.
Correct.
It is implemented by these people who have gone through the system, who are supposed to allow the culture to evolve or keep it stagnant. What's our problem here?
Our problem is this. Let's go back. What is Nigeria? Nigeria is a multi-ethnic, multicultural democracy. Or at least that is our aspiration, democracy. But we are multicultural. United States of America, where I live, is not a monocultural country. It is a multicultural country, right? So South Africa is a multicultural country with 11 official languages. So our diversity, our diverse culture is not the source of our underdevelopment. We can create a united Nigeria based on the diversity of our cultures. The problem is we don't have a clear national agenda. We don't have that people can aspire towards. And if you do not believe if you don't have any conviction, you believe in anything. And that's our problem. So I come from the approach that Nigeria as a multicultural state, that is the source of our energy, the source of our strength. So we need to harness these cultural values, these institutions based on knowledge. Now, in fact, I'm now moving away from culture and say, when we talk about culture, let's talk about indigenous knowledge. Indigenous knowledge means that our scientists in the laboratory can develop solutions that meet our problems. Instead of looking out, they can source resources within to address our challenges. See, we don't have to always import everything in. There are things that we can make with our environment has given us everything that we need. You see, but without this consciousness, we will not realize it. And without this consciousness, we cannot move forward. So cultural policy is in the book, but it's not implemented.
When you were speaking earlier, you used two words. You used the word culture,
yes,
and you also used the word tradition. Are they interchangeable? Because if they are, just off the top of my head, and I remember Fela's song,
yes,
where in the middle of it somewhere it says, culture and tradition. Good.
Yes.
So are they interchangeable? What is our culture?
Yeah.
What is our tradition?
They can be interchangeable. It depends on the context.
Okay.
And tradition is not simply about the past. It's about the present. And it's about innovation. It's not about static. So when those of us who are anthropologists talk about culture, we are not, or sociologists, we are not talking about a static cultural life in the past. As an archaeologist, I study periods from 300 BC up to the present. That's what I do. So I have the privilege of seeing changes, continuities at the same time. And I always say that our policymakers, they are not grounded in history. This issue of security, for example, that we are talking about, if our policymakers are grounded in history, they will be able to learn about how previous pre-colonial states, empires, kingdoms, how they solved problems of security. That the most important thing that any nation has to its people, the most important responsibility is security. And when that security begins to collapse, you begin to see that the empire will unravel, the kingdom will unravel. It happened to Roman Empire, it happened everywhere. So our policymakers need to really step back. As they are thinking about the future, let them reflect a little bit about the past. So, and that's where tradition comes in. So we need to bring tradition in order to inform the present so we can have a more deliberative, a more successful future aspirations. So these are the kind of parameters in which...
Can you give an example of, from your studies, you're free to pick any part of the country that you want, and just give us an example of the changing culture which you have spoken about.
I study mostly the Yoruba region of West Africa. In fact, I just came back from a 6-week archaeological fieldwork in Oyo Empire. Oyo Empire is a very good example of resilience, history of resilience, going back to about 800 years. Oyo started as a small kingdom, very close to River Niger. As a result of the regional turbulence of the 15th century, it was displaced. They moved to Igbo in present-day Oyo State. But its leaders were visionary. So what did they do? In order to repair the problems that displaced them, they established the first regional network of collaboration with other ethnic groups. The Mosi in present-day Burkina Faso, the Ibariba in present-day Nigeria and Benin Republic, the Wasangari, and many other peoples as far as Mali, to solve their own local problem. You see, collaboration across ethnic boundaries. As a result, they created an empire that was multinational, multi-ethnic. Ibariba, Musi, everybody were part of Oyo Empire. You see? And then, so you can see that clear example. I can also use example of many other groups in Nigeria, the Hausa city states, and many other ones. So we have a history of resilience. We have a history of collaborating across ethnic boundaries. We have a history of trading far and wide, of innovations in technology. For example, Ile-Ife, in present-day Ile-Ife, that was a center of glass making in the 11th through the 14th century. Glass is one of the highest peaks of technological innovations in any society. Ife is the only place in sub-Saharan Africa, actually outside Egypt, that was producing glass. And they used that glass to establish far-ranging network of commerce as far as the Mediterranean. These are the stories we want our youth to know.
And it is the same glass that they used to buy slaves in this.
Exactly. In fact, if that's the irony of it, right? They were making glass beads. And when the Portuguese arrived in the 15th century, by that time, Ife Empire had already collapsed. They met batches of glass beads among the Shekiri, among the Benin that came from Ile-Ife. They could not replicate it. Because if a glass, no matter how long it has been in the soil, it remains hard when you excavate it.
Now, you said something earlier, Prof, about how we should use our ethnic nationalities collaboratively.
Yes.
But it would seem as if we are torn, you know, in our different divides right now. Yes. Even though I remember in Nigeria's first national anthem, though tribes and tongues may differ, in brotherhood we stand. Are we in brotherhood now? I mean, because, I mean, you talked about the Hausa, you've talked about the Kanuri, the Fulani, the Shekiri, the Igbo, the Yorubas, and all of that. But it would seem like people are more interested in their different nationalities. So you're to Israel, so to speak, now, as opposed to that national ethos that you talked about earlier.
Yeah, there are two things going on. One, because we've displaced history deliberately, our leaders who knew what they were doing, they displaced history from our schools. Imagine, how do you build a country, and in the process of socializing your children, you make them ignorant of their history? How can you build a future? So that's the first problem. Because these leaders knew that if our children know history, some of the gimmicks they want to play on us will not be successful. So now we have basically two generations who have no knowledge of the past. And let me say this. It is not true that our ethnic differences is the source of our division. It's our politics, it's our national politics that is the source of our division. I just came from Oyo-Ile, the whole Oyo Empire. I lived among the Fulani for 6 weeks.
In this same
country.
How many decades ago?
No. I'm talking about last week. I just came back.
You lived among the Fulanis.
Yes.
In Oyo.
Oyo Ile.
town.
Old Oyo. Oh no. Old Oyo Empire. See, Oyo, the present Oyo is different from Oyo Ile. Oyo Ile is bush now. It's bush, you know. Okay. Bara, Koso. These are ancient places. They are archaeological sites. Our Fulani brothers and sisters were living there. I've been living
and
with
they don't speak a word of Yoruba.
No, some of them, no.
They now speak Yoruba.
This is the problem. We have many layers of Fulani, and we have to be careful how we talk about these issues, because these people are not going anywhere. They were born here. They speak a little bit Yoruba, but they also speak Fulfulde. They see me as their brother. They were born in that area. I did not lose a single pen, a pin. I lived among them. No molestation, nothing. I just put my tent in front of their houses.
Wait a minute. You built your own tent?
Oh, yes. As an archaeologist, I carry my tent everywhere I go with my crew. We have about 6 tents there. We live there among them. We dance at the end of our field work. So our people at the local level, they are interested in peace. Our people are interested in dialogue. But we need leaders to harness the energy at the local level so that we can have dialogue. There are challenges, surely, but I don't believe that our culture is the source of our problem. Okay?
So this brings to the fore all that talk about all this being politics.
Oh, yes.
Well, this is a living
I just
example
witnessed it. So
of someone who just returned from the bushes.
The kind of rhetoric we see in our urban centers, I wish our leaders would come with me one day and just go and spend just 2-3 days there. So now, I'm not saying that there are no problems, there are no challenges, but we need to figure out who are the perpetrators. There are bad people in all groups, not ethnic groups. And we have to be careful not to homogenize a problem of security into labeling one group as the problem.
But the challenge here, Prof, is the word is out there already.
It is there.
The word has escaped, so to speak.
Yeah.
You know, once any one of these people know, you hear about the politics, and then you just see the next man, you know, the next thing. And of course, what you are saying is what a good number of politicians are also saying, that we should not label any ethnic group as being the one who are perpetrators of insecurity. It shouldn't be done. But the word is out there already.
Yes.
You know, so how do we rein it in?
We can rein it in by being informed. I think it starts from empathy, and empathy is very important, and being informed. Now, there are problems of security because of the socioeconomic dimensions of the country. Until we solve the problem of socioeconomy in this country, there are disparities. Let me give you an example. I live in the U.S. I don't like using U.S. example to transfer it to Nigeria, but I will say this. In the U.S., when you see a pedestrian walking on the street, if you are an Okada rider, you will stop for the pedestrian to cross the road. You will stop, automatically stop. If you are a car driver, you will stop for the Okada. If you are a truck, you will stop for the car. In Nigeria, it's the opposite. The Okada man expects the pedestrian to run away from the street. The truck driver wants the car driver to physically get out of this road for him. See, we have this problem whereby we don't respect the dignity of our fellow human beings. Until we begin to do that, and that's where the culture of Omoluabi in Yoruba paradigm comes in.
But Prof, it wasn't always like that.
That's what I'm saying. It's not always like that, but it is what it is now.
So where did it begin from?
Well, we copied something from the British. When the British came, they were coming from their own top-down society, and they are no longer there like that anymore, by the way. They've changed their own ways, but we have not changed. They brought a way, and they saw us, people of lower status were sent here to govern us, by the way. And they are trying to put themselves on top of us. That's why we say, sir, sir, all the time to everybody. Now, so they created an hierarchy for us. And they socialized our first generation of elite into that British or Western way of life, of top-down control. So,
monarchical.
Hierarchical.
System.
Which is different. Now, in Ife, we always say that Omodegwan Agbagban. that is the wisdom of the youth and the elders that we use to create the city of Ile-Ife. So that kind of collaborative spirit of dignity, we don't do that anymore. So we have a system whereby it's very oppressive. That's why I say that our institutions are very oppressive. That is the Nigerian state that we have. All our institutions, they are oppressive. So if you have an oppressive institution, you will have insecurity because people are no longer, they don't believe in that institution. So we need that cultural reviver of Omoluabi that will respect my fellow neighbor. No matter what you do, give dignity to people. And I think people are rebelling.
How do we begin to do that?
Well,
everything seems to have just gone to pieces.
I had the privilege in 2011 to give a keynote address at the University of Ibadan at a conference in honor of Willy Bayer, the German, Jewish German cultural anthropologist, after he died. And I titled that lecture, Crisis of Culture and Consciousness in Post-Colony, Which Way for Nigeria?
Before you answer that question or go further, my director is saying he's enjoying it so much, he forgot to call for break. Okay. But we'll do that right now. Please stay with us. Well, thanks for staying with us. So, Prof, you were going to answer a question you asked yourself.
Yes, yes. And I said that I wrote, I gave a lecture at the University of Ibadan 2011 titled Crisis of Culture and Consciousness in Nigeria, in the post-colony, which way for Nigeria. So in that presentation, I laid out a set of issues about our educational system. Your question is, where did we go wrong? Yeah. And we went in a different direction after colonialism because we did not really truly decolonize our educational system. You see, our school system is where we are supposed to socialize and bring up a new generation of citizens that will believe in the nation, that will believe in themselves, and that will believe that they are responsible citizens in the global world. But our educational system does not emphasize critical thinking. Without critical thinking, you cannot really understand who you are as an individual, and you cannot fully be a true contributor to your society. Whether you're a scientist, whether you're a medical doctor, you are just there just to make money.
But unfortunately, Prof, yes, it is the certificates gotten from those, from that educational system that gets people jobs and stuff like that. How do we begin to even reverse or address all of that?
We started the discussion when we have to hear about dignity of labor, dignity, respect for what people know, not for who people know. You see, when we begin to respect what people know, and we are beginning to celebrate excellence, you know, we're a country of mediocrity today, for the most part, right? Whereby many of our graduates cannot fully innovate on their own, right? Because they have not been given the tools that they need to excel in the world. Let me give you an example. In my university, I did a conference some years ago on African businesses. In fact, the conference was sponsored by EcoBank at University of North Carolina. And these bank managers came, and they were asking me, how can I get students, final year students for them that they can recruit in Nigeria, in South Africa? And I say, why? You have graduates there. They say, because the educational system has not prepared them to become global citizens, and that the investment of what they will invest on those students, on how to speak, how to write, is just too enormous. They want global citizens. Because in my university, we're already thinking about what kind of education are we going to serve our students in the next 10 years. We're already role-playing it now because we are already thinking ahead. So that is what institutions that wants to become leaders, that's what they do. So so this is not an issue about leaders because we always reduce everything to leaders in Nigeria. No, the problem is multi-level. All of us have a role to play in this. So that academics, teachers, parents, policymakers, civil servants. We all need to work together towards, and that's why I'm advocating this idea of cultural revival as the basis of creating society that we want.
Are you therefore saying that they found African students more global than their own? And they thought that they were more global citizens?
That's what they are saying, that they thought that African students who are studying abroad, because of the liberal education.
Oh, those who are studying abroad.
Yes.
Not those who are studying here. Okay.
They feel that they will be more global, that they're more global. And I say, no, the problem is not where they are studying. It's about the quality of education that we are serving here. That our students here are eager as well. They can be global. I'm a visiting professor at the University of Ibadan as well. And I trained my students here as well. So, and I found them to be competitive. It's how we handle the students. It's what we give them that will make them global or competitive in the world. So we need to go back to the drawing board. If we are going to become a nation that is global, that is going to, because there's nothing you do today that is not going to be global. It is what you bring into that globality that will make you successful or fail.
Well, Prof, I have had the responsibility as a result of what we do here to take a cursory look at Nigeria's education policy. I've also taken a cursory look at the Nigeria's national health policy, at least the current ones. And I just want to ask you, if you have as well, even if you have not, what quantum of culture do you think, I don't even know if what I'm saying is of any, semblance, but you might be able to give us a perspective to it. Because there is a way cultures train their children before formal education, so to speak, came. There is a way that the different cultures, the Hausa culture, the Fulani culture, the Igbo culture, had their health systems before modern pharmaceutical ingenuity and the rest of them, modern science and all came. We had science before science came to us, so to speak.
Of course.
How much of that, of our foundation, of our historical privileges, do you see us putting in, or should be put in, to what we do in the education that you talked about, in the health, and various other sectors?
Let me start with the language. Language is an important part of who we are as a people. Without language, there's no philosophy, there won't be any things about ethics, there won't be anything about values. Language is very primary. Because the language in which we think defines how we think. So I always joke to my students when I'm teaching that I'm thinking in Yoruba and I'm translating it into English simultaneously. And that makes me a better person.
That process is quite long.
It's long, but
I asked a multinational, a staff of a multinational once to speak pidgin. Said, it's difficult. I said, why? He said, I think in English. So I think I understand it better now.
Yeah, but see, our brain is such a very fascinating engine, right? It's amazing what it can do when you think in another one language. Because that's why it's possible for some people to speak 5, 6 languages. But they can only think in one. So I have the privilege of thinking in Yoruba because growing up in my home, all I spoke was Yoruba. In my home until maybe I get to boarding school. That's when the first time I saw, no, don't speak in vernacular. And I'm like, what is it? And you are beaten for that. You see, so that's another legacy of colonialism, that children are being caned for speaking in their native language, the language in which they think. Because the misconception then was that by speaking in so-called vernacular, they will not be a better English speaker. They will be poor English speaker, which is not true. That kids can learn many languages when they are growing up. So we need to start from that point of view, that our languages are very important, because that is what anchors us in place. The second thing, and then from that point onward, many things begin to open up to us in terms of innovations, in terms of ideas. There are many, you mentioned it before, that we're scientists before modernization. When we think about modernization, we always think of Western way of life. And I argue in one of my new books, The Yoruba, A New History, that we were modern before the Europeans arrived to colonize us. Modernity means that we are global thinkers. Whether you are Igbo, whether you are Hausa, we have been networking with different parts of the world before colonialism. So Western world did not bring modernity to us. There was a modernity. In fact, without our modernity, they would not have become modern themselves. Because we had a history of about 300 years of slavery, in which...
After all, Don Domingos went to university in Spain in the 1400s.
Correct, correct. You know? So these are the issues that, and that's why it's important to tell stories, to talk about history, so that our children can become anchored in our history, our culture, our tradition, so they are not embarrassed about our tradition. There's nothing in our tradition that we have done that is worse than what Western society did.
Well, you know, this language thing you talked about, by the way, clearly, if you need a PA in your anthropology, you have one next to you, because she is also as far back as ancient of... Anyway, you said something the other time about language.
Yes.
If you get on the social media now, it would seem to many youths, 65% of them, according to one of our previous guests, since 65% of them make up the Nigerian population today, many of them see our ways, their cultural ways, our traditions, as, what's it called now? Borrow me the English word. Archaic?
Barbaric?
But no. We're not in touch with the times.
Oh, okay.
We're not modern.
Oh, yeah.
Because so to many of them, speaking in what you call vernacular, speaking in their native languages, is backward, is not developed. You know, so persuading them that speaking your native language doesn't make you not to be modern, it's going to be a hard sell.
Yeah.
Now, how do we bridge the gap? Because clearly the gap is there.
Is there. And that's why what we are talking about is actually sad as well and also urgent. Because those 65% youth now, they are in the next 15 years, we expect them to become our leaders. They will be moving into leadership position. And that's why what we are talking here this morning is very urgent, because we need to begin to address that issue. That, listen, there's nothing in this framework of our tradition, our culture, or language that cannot compete with other languages. In my university where I teach, UNC Charlotte, no matter what discipline you are, which discipline you are studying, you must learn another language outside English. You must be proficient in one other language outside English.
Most of them speak Spanish, right?
Spanish. In my institution, when I arrived there about 13 years ago, I said, okay, is there an African language? They said, no. I introduced Swahili and Yoruba. You see? Because I believe that, you know, if my university is going to be a global university, there must be African presence. So I introduced Swahili, which is widely spoken in East Africa. I introduced Yoruba because I would be the one to teach it, because I couldn't find, and so I could have introduced Igbo if I'm an Igbo speaker. You see, and then many kids from Lagos or Ibadan who are in my university will come. Now, when they're confronted with the requirement to take another foreign language outside English, they say, hey, uncle, can you sign this form for me? I can speak Yoruba. I say, no, sit down. Let me give you, speak it first. To me. Take this exam. I'll give them exam. And if they fail, I'll say, oh, and at home, we only speak it this way. No. you have to speak it fully, the full sentence, not just the broken Yoruba.
They speak Lagos Yoruba.
Lagos Yoruba. So I sent them to the classroom, like other white students were taking. I said, if white students can learn Yoruba, what is your problem? Your name is Abiola. Your fellow African Americans will ask you where you are from, and you say, I'm Abiola from Nigeria. I'm Yoruba.
Or Abiola.
Abiola. Abiola. The way they spell it too is very funny. And then, so I said, no, this is important. So I would then go through this lecture of the importance of your identity. So language is very important in that regard. And it's the foundation of everything, of civilizations. Because once a language dies, an entire civilization dies.
Which also raises another question to my mind right now. According to the United Nations, UNESCO actually, there are about 4 categories of endangered languages.
Yes.
There is the, I've forgotten them, but like 2 or 3 of them say that a language is considered endangered if it's only the grandparents that speak the language.
Yes.
The parents themselves cannot speak the language.
Yeah.
And in fact, there's another level of the endangered, languages that it's not only the grandparents now. The grandparents can speak it sparsely. And then there are languages, from that website. In Nigeria, 50 languages that have died.
Yes.
Because they have not been used significantly. How do we now begin to read? Because there are, according to the UNESCO again, there are 29 languages in Nigeria that are endangered.
That's correct. And this is where the first question we are talking about national cohesion becomes relevant. We can achieve national cohesion through language. We have a cultural policy in Nigeria which spells our language as important. But you see, as much as we talk about decentralization, we talk about that we're a nation or federation, we still have this mindset of a unitary government. We want federal government to do everything. No, it's not possible. It is the responsibility of each state to translate the Nigerian cultural policy into what is relevant in each state. There's no reason why in your state we should not be teaching Yoruba, Igbo, and other languages in our schools. Our children in elementary school, primary school, we should expose them to at least 4 languages, 4 Nigerian languages, in addition to English. So that when people are speaking Fufude, at least they are learning the alphabet, they are learning how to count in Fufude in Yoruba. Children can do these things.
Are you saying that we should, don't answer this question yet, but are you saying that we should include this in our education policy?
Yes.
Let's no.
I'm very eager.
We'll take it on after this break. To stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. Professor Ogudiro is still with us here, and he believes that we need to review our education policy. Isn't that what he said?
Yes. Our educational policy needs to be reviewed and place language at the center of it, because we're not talking about national unity, talking about national cohesion, a just society. We can achieve those things when, from the little age, our children are exposed to the diversity of this country, not just where they are coming from.
So you don't think that the National Youth Service Corps...
Many of them don't even speak their
language.
language.
But it's one thing to speak. It's another thing to write.
Oh.
That's the beginning.
I can speak Yoruba fluently, but I cannot write Yoruba for the life of me. That's Yoruba is such a difficult language to write, as far as I'm concerned.
That's true.
One word, depending on where you put the accent, has sometimes 10 meanings.
Well, that's true.
Well, he is here. He's a lecturer in Yoruba, so please educate her.
But what you also realize is that when you begin to look at the history of these languages, many of these languages in Nigeria, for example, have common origins. No, people don't realize that Igbo, Yoruba, Edo, there was a time that this just one language, Benue Kwa, proto-language, about 7,000 BC. And by about 4,000 BC, this language began to split Igbo went its way, Edo went its way. Then there's a language we call Proto-Yoruboid language, which includes, you want to hear, the present-day Yoruba, Ishekiri, and Igala. These three languages only split about between 300 BC and 300 AD. That's when they went their own. They began to take
like when Shekiris speak,
of course, understand.
Yes. And it would seem like the languages are going to split a little further because I don't know if the Oyo man can understand what the Ondo person is saying. You know?
That's true. Well, you can understand if you are a good traveler, if you've traveled, but yeah, it's difficult. When I do my research among the Owo, for example, I have to strain my. I'm from Ibadan. So I have to strain my ears very well to understand. but do you know, Ishekiri is closer to Okun languages in Kogi than Toyo?
Really? But
yes.
I have a friend who is from Owo.
Yes.
When we meet, he speaks his language, I speak Shekiri, and we communicate.
Of course.
We understand each other.
Of course.
Really?
Yes. Because the Ishekiri Owo, parts of Ijebu, Okun in Kogi State, they belong to the stock that branch out from Proto-Yoruboid. So these kind of stories are important so that we can see how we are connected. It's true that colonialism brought us together, but we are not divided before. We interacted.
Yes. Now, Prof, when I was in France, there were three of us who went from University of Ibadan. I am Shekiri. The other lady was from Asaba. So she was from the Igbo stock. And then the third was Yoruba. And we always communicated in English. And we always got asked, either from people from other African countries or from our white classmates, why don't you people speak Nigerian? You're all from Nigeria. Why are you communicating in English?
Yeah.
Is there a need for a Nigerian language to be spoken by all Nigerians?
Well, in a way, we have been creative in producing what we call pidgin English, right? Or Creole English. That is as far as we have gone. But I think trying to impose a language, on Nigerians today, it means that we have to take one of the largely spoken languages, which I don't think is wise. I don't think it is prudent to do that. And that's why we can maintain our multi-language or multilingual society as we have it, but by encouraging or providing facilities for people to learn other people's languages. Okay. I think that would be the better way forward.
Well, gratifyingly, I still have a copy of your book. I'm not giving you. Yoruba, the new history.
A new history.
A new history.
The e-books.
Yeah.
Yeah, the e-books. Yes.
Good.
The e-books.
I'm about to close this segment, so please don't say anything right now.
No, please, before you go, I must read this from Francis Osianwan, who says that Nigerians must start respecting each other before we can move forward. I wish to praise Professor, because I traveled to Holland and I saw the way people give way to the smallest moving objects.
Yes.
So we need to start by respecting each other.
Yes.
And not just each other, but every living, crawling thing.
Correct.
And we need to, we just have to, thank you this morning for making time out of your busy schedule.
Thank you.
This time you probably would have preferred to spend it among the Fulanis in Oyoile.
Well, I enjoy having a conversation with you as well. This is very wonderful.
When are you going back?
Well, I'm going back next year because
your research is still going on.
Research is still going
on. Okay.
Akin Ogudiran is Professor of Africana Studies, Anthropology and History at the University of North Carolina. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So we're back for another conversation shortly. Stay with us.